But it doesn't say it, does it?
Good evening. This is a work session of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow. Can I get a motion to go into a special session?
Motion to go into special session.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? This is a special session of the Board of Trustees called for a really good reason. And that is to promote some folks in our police department to other positions, and I should say, this is the kind of thing that, I will say, this is the kind of thing that's really fun for all of us, and I love the crowd noise. Who's that kid? Families should be here for this kind of occasion. This is celebrating police officers in our police department who have earned well-earned promotions and new assignments. This is not about being deserving of anything. This is a reflection of the work that they have been doing over the years, and they have earned these positions, and we are proud to be able to be part of this promotion. So we have some business matters to take care of so that we can do all of this. Part of it is recognizing the retirement of one of our longest term probably lieutenants, because we can't make a promotion without acknowledging that retirement. So your name comes up again, Frank. Calm down. So we're going to start with that first resolution, please.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow accepting retirement notice from Lieutenant of Police. Whereas Frank Horatko, Lieutenant of Police, by the attached letter dated December 18, 2019, and effective December 28, 2019, submitted his retirement notice letter from the Sleepy Hollow Police Department. And whereas said retirement notice letter must be formally accepted by the Village of Sleepy Hollow Board of Trustees, and whereas the Village by resolution number 07-138-03, dated July 15, 2003, adopted a policy for employee termination and rehire, and therefore be it resolved that the village accepts the retirement notice letter from Lieutenant of Police Frank Horatko by the attached letter dated December 18, 2019, and effective December 28, 2019, commencing at 4 p.m., finds that the termination rehire policy of July 15, 2003 applies, and be it resolved that a copy of the policy is forwarded to and a copy be placed in his personnel record with proof of service, and be it further resolved that Police Lieutenant Horatko has been employed by the Village of Sleepy Hollow Police Department since 1980, and the Board of Trustees wishes him all the best in his future endeavors. So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow promoting Detective Sergeant Stephen Doherty to Police Lieutenant. Whereas adequate supervision within any police agency is essential to efficient operations, and whereas there is a vacancy in the position of lieutenant, and whereas Sergeant Stephen Doherty has taken the competitive civil service examination for the position of lieutenant of police, and presently is on the civil service eligibles list 78-093 for this position, ranking in the top 3 for this position. Whereas the Chief of Police has recommended that Sergeant Doherty be promoted to the rank of Lieutenant of Police, and whereas the Village trustees that interviewed the candidate for this position concur with the Chief's recommendation. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby promotes Sergeant Stephen Doherty to the rank of Lieutenant of Police from the Civil Service Eligibles List, number 78-093, and said promotion to become effective January 22nd, 2020, and an annual salary of $140,226.61, and subject to a probationary period of 12 weeks. Is that correct, Anthony? 12 weeks?
12 to 52 weeks.
12 to 52 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. I stand corrected. And the approval of the Westchester County Department of Human Resources. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? It was unanimous. Thank you.
Doing this one.
You want to take
Okay,
Sergeant?
I'll do it. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow promoting police officer to Sergeant of Police. Whereas proper supervision within any police agency is essential to its efficient operations, and whereas the Sleepy Hollow Police Department has a vacancy in the Sergeant of Police position, and in order to maintain the efficiency of the Sleepy Hollow Police Department operations, this position should be filled. And whereas Police Officer James D. Warren has taken the competitive civil service examination for the position of Sergeant of Police and presently is on the civil service eligible list number 77-705, ranking first place for the position. And whereas the trustees who participated in the interviews along with the police chief have made the recommendation to promote Police Officer James D. Warren to the position of Police Sergeant. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the mayor's appointment of Police Officer Warren to the rank of Police Sergeant from Civil Service Eligible List number 77705, and said promotion to become effective on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020, at an annual salary of $129,966.64. Be it further resolved, said promotion is subject to a probationary period of 12 to 52 weeks and the approval of the Westchester County Department of Human Resources. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow to approve salary adjustments in the Police Department. Be it resolved that the Mayor and Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow acknowledge the Police Chief's reassignment of Patrol Officer Anthony Guzzo and a Sergeant, Jared Chemotek, to the Detectives Division, effective January 22nd, 2020, and the adjustment of their salaries per the PBA contract. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? And the resolution is approved. We're going to stop right there and move on to swearing in these officers and sergeants and new lieutenant, new sergeant, new lieutenant, so you guys can get to work early tomorrow morning. Or go back to work if you're on your shift right now. So, Mr. Guzzo, would you please step forward? Sorry, Officer Guzzo. I want you to repeat after me after you raise your right hand.
I, Antonio Guzzo,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New York,
of the State of New York
and the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
and the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of detective
the duties of detective
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Don't go too far away. We're going to do them at the end, okay? Thank you. Sergeant Chemotek. Thank you. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I
I, Jared Chemotek,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New York
of the State of New York
and the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
and the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Detective Sergeant
the duties of Detective Sergeant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. He's a happy kid, I can't help it. No, that's wonderful. Repeat after me. I
I, James Warren,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United
of
States
the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New
of
York
the State of New York
and the Code
and the Code
of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of sergeant
the duties of sergeant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations. Sergeant Doherty. It'll be the last time I call you Officer Warren and the last time I call you Sergeant Doherty. You're ready. Okay. Repeat after me, please.
I, Stephen Doherty,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New York
of the State of New York
and the Code
and the Code
of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
of the Village of Sleepy Hollow,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of
the
lieutenant
duties of lieutenant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Lieutenant, we like photo ops, so we're going to do one with us, and if there are any family members as we move forward, and we'll go in reverse order. Let's get one shot with everybody. Sergeant Warren. Yes. Come on, put those short people in the front. Yeah. Please stand behind, Chief.
You guys can smile a little.
We think we're fine. Doesn't anybody in the family want to have a picture of their spouse? All right, we're gonna start with Don. You're first. Sergeant Warren, you're next. Steve, you start. stunningly interesting work session in front of us. And I'm sure you'd all be fascinated. We're going to take a 1-minute break to allow the children to leave. Can I get a motion to end this?
Yeah, but her door's locked. And she's got the good chocolate.
Well, we do have a pretty extensive agenda this evening and some, all kidding aside, some pretty fascinating subjects as part of that. And we're going to start off with the discussion, another continuing part of our continuing discussion on the LoSAP program, the length of service award program that we are considering or strongly considering for our police department and our ambulance corps. So we've received some information about what some of the options that we have, and we're going to continue that discussion now as we move forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Good evening, everyone. Just to refresh your memories, I am Bob Sagastano, this is Vincent Coolio, and we are from Hometown Firefighters and EMS Services down on Long Island. I've never cleared a room like that before, to be honest with you. I've said some bad things, but never cleared a room like that.
I had a friend who had a band that could do that.
All right, so for the sake of everyone's sanity, and there's a lot of information in front of you, but I don't know that we need to go through all of it. It's really, a lot of it is reference material. What I would suggest, I broke it up into fire and EMS. So if I could call your attention to fire, and I numbered the pages because I figured it would be impossible to try to direct you to a document without a number on it. So if we go to the first page, basically what we're going to be talking about, or I'm going to try to be outlining, is the specifications to this program that someone needs to make a decision about what you would like and ultimately what the cost would be. And then I also took it upon myself to provide you with some life insurance information that you may or may not want to utilize. So if you turn to page 2, what I tried to do is, some sections of this are going to be really not going to be subject to discussion because they are mandated by the general municipal law. Other sections are options, so to speak. So in terms of eligibility, that's a mandate. It's 18 years of age and the completion of 1 year of service to be in the program. I'm sorry.
Hang on, can you give Larry a copy?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. Oh, I thought you gave him one, I'm sorry.
Copies, I should.
You got the EMS also? Okay. So the eligibility is governed by general municipal law, so there's no debate or discussion there. Entitlement age, we're going to have to make a decision on that. It can be anywhere between 55 and 65 years of age. In our preliminary discussions with Anthony and the members of the fire and EMS people, we determined a proposal to you of age 60 as the entitlement age. So these are what the figures that you're going to see in the future are based upon. There are two programs. One is called the Defined Contribution Program. That's a program whereby the village trustees would allot a particular amount of money each year for each firefighter. And that can range anywhere between $300 to $1,200 a year. And I'll go through that next just to keep it, that's a simpler program to explain. The other alternative, which you see is not necessarily checked off, but we proposed it to you, was the defined benefit, which there is a monthly payment of either between $5 to $30 a month multiplied by the number of years of service, with a maximum of $800 payable to a firefighter in a particular year. That would represent going out like 30, 40 years. We initially discussed the possibility of using $25 a month as the possible there. Vesting is not subject to discussion. It's a 5-year vesting, which means if a firefighter is in your department or EMS program for more than 5 years, once they leave, they're invested into the program, they can move anywhere in the country essentially, and you're going to owe them the funds that they've accumulated or acquired. Anything less than 5 years, they basically lose their rights to the benefits that they have been provided or accrued. There are a number of payment options. If we do the defined benefit program, there are a number of payment options. The simplest one is life with 10 years certain. That's the one we decided to propose to you. What that means is that someone, either the firefighter, EMS personnel. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just, if you could, yeah, you can follow along.
I'm sorry, I just stepped out really quick, I apologize.
So the payment option, life with 10 years certain, basically says that someone, either the firefighter or the beneficiary, is going to be entitled to a minimum of 10 years or 120 payments at whatever amount they accrue. There are other payment options that we can include. Prior service, this is a large discussion or decision point. The general municipal law allows for what's called a 5-year buyback, meaning if a firefighter right now in your department or EMS has 5 years of service, at the start of the program, they can buy back up to a 5-year period. It can be less than that, it can be 1 to 5, or it could be 0 if you decide not to give them the buyback. That's the idea on that, is to allow for a start point. The general municipal law doesn't allow you to go beyond 5 years because, quite frankly, it gets very expensive then in terms of you're accruing a liability for a period going backwards. So we are proposing what's in most plans is a 5-year buyback allowable. Post-entitlement Part 2, LoSAP. That's the program by which the state mandated that after a firefighter or EMS personnel reaches retirement age or entitlement age, let's say we decide to use 60, and they remain active, responding to alarms and making their points and so forth, you are allowed to pay them what's called post-entitlement. So that's an option. Quite frankly, it's an option in the law, but the EEOC, as I mentioned in our previous conversations, has basically dictated that from a federal level to the state, saying this would be age discrimination, because the original law did not have it in it. Fed said, that's age discrimination, you got to include it. So I've included it. And then there's a component that we can add to this, this life insurance component, and what I've quoted is, I've tried to give you a number of, kind of a menu of picks, but the program allows for anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000 be purchased for a firefighter or EMS personnel a year. It can be inside the LoSAP program, or it can be outside the LoSAP program. Right now, God forbid one of your firefighters would have passed. To my knowledge, and I may be incorrect on this, but from what I've been able to gather, I don't know that there's any life insurance benefits available to them other than what they would get from workers' comp. And I guess the Benevolent Association of the Fire Department has some funds that they allot for a death benefit. So I don't know if that's something that you wanted to consider. The fact that it wasn't here, I thought I'd at least propose it to you. And again, I only proposed 5 and 10, but we can talk about whatever you'd like. So those are kind of the options. That's what these quotes are based upon, and then, of course, we can make adjustments as we go. If you turn to page 4, it's a blue page, it's called Defined Contribution Program. Getting down to the cost of the program, again, the law allows anywhere between an annual contribution of $600 to $1,200 per year. So the math on this is pretty simple. You basically take the number of firefighters that you've got, and you're going to be allotting a certain amount of money going forward. The actuary is projecting these costs out over a 30-year period. So in this case, you'd have to have a start point. My suggestion might be January 1 of 2020, depending upon if the lawyers say that that's permissible to put that in a referendum, basically starting the program January 1, or it could start at January 1 of 2021. So in this case, I believe there's 55 members in the fire service. They have a... Sure.
Page 6.
Page 6, I'm sorry. So they have a total accumulated accrued number of years of 257 is what the actuary tells me. That's not on this report, but that's how she gets these programs. So in the case of, let's talk about the $600, if you were to elect to do $600 a year. The annual estimated contribution would be $33,000, and that's arrived at basically by doing 55 members times the $600. And then there's a 5-year, the period of service for the buyback would equate to about $19,500. The program administrative costs, including the actuary and our check issuance and administration, would be $3,300. So the annual estimated cost for that program would be $55,800, exclusive of insurance. We'll talk about insurance at the end. If you were to bump it up to the max of $1,200, the annual contribution becomes $66,000. The buyback amortized is $39,000. Administrative cost is $33,000, and you can see it becomes $108,000. So that's fairly simple in terms of it's really more mathematics than anything else. It is the less expensive program, and I don't know how much money the village has allotted or considered for the program, but I thought I'd start off with a simple one to show you that. Let me stop there. Any questions on the decision points that have to be made or the defined contribution program?
2 quick questions.
Certainly.
In your experience, a 4.5% interest assumption is realistic?
Yep. When the actuary does the analysis, any actuarial analysis, she has to make an assumption in terms of a number of things. So in this particular case, she's made an assumption that everybody that's on your roster is going to stay until entitlement age and is going to make their points every year. It's the most expensive analysis, not saying that you're going to end up paying it, but that's the most conservative approach. As far as the interest rates go, we were much higher in years past when the interest rates were higher. So what this assumes is that over the next 30 years, on average, you'll be at 4.5. I would suggest to you that one of the things that we do is always try to take into consideration for our customers and clients the fact that you might be subject to a state comptroller's audit. And I assure you that if an auditor came in and was analyzing 4.5%, they would believe that would be conservative and well within a reasonable range, so to speak.
Okay. Second question
Yes, sir.
is, I'm assuming at some point we could actually get a number for a buyback if we wanted to pay down a portion of the buyback rather than amortize it over 10 years.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, you'll be able to, what I'm going to show you when we get to the defined contribution, defined benefit, I actually had her do the actuarial analysis for you a little bit further, so you can see what your accrued liability is. But yes, you can what we'll do every year is whatever money you allot to this, we will give you what's referred to as a funding percentage, or the amount that's funded. And that's simply nothing more than the accrued liability, the assets over the accrued liability will equal a funding percentage or ratio. Now,
So,
you're starting off, of course, if I may, just 1 second more. When you're starting off like this, the only, really what you have accrued is only the years of service that we're saying the members have up to this point. You don't have all 55 starting to collect tomorrow. I think there's 9, I believe, that are eligible to start collecting something. So it's just a start point. You don't have a whole lot of accrued liability at this point. I'm
So
sorry,
you-
Sam.
That's okay. My question was basically, if we just look at the first line, right, the $600 per individual, and the buyback is 19.5, so we're looking at like $56,000 a year approximately.
That's correct.
That would be the cost that we would pay annually.
Correct.
Going forward, right?
Right.
So, okay, so it's really, you're cutting a check, this is what we're spending every year against the budget. Whereas when we get into the defined benefit, it's the numbers change a little bit because of the way it's laid out. But one question I do have is, how much control does the individual have around their own investment? Because basically, we're giving them a contribution, right? And they're gonna have, like, I guess, a list of stocks or equities, whatever, that they would be able to choose to invest in.
No, there isn't going to be any individual choosing. You folks will make the decision as to how the your funds are invested. It'll be uniform for everyone.
It'll be uniform.
So what'll
Okay.
happen is, at the end of the year, if you did a defined contribution program, you'd get an actuarial report that would list the firefighter's name. It would say, let's say you posted $600 to that person's name. There would be interest added, and then there would be something called forfeitures. If 2 firefighters left, and I'm not going to make this up, there was $1,000 left, that 1,000 would be distributed among all 53 members at that point. So it would be amount of contribution, interest, forfeitures, and balance. The
Okay.
following year, you would add another $600 and go through the process again. And then when they reached entitlement age, that's when they would collect whatever that figure was.
Okay.
So if we do better on the, it assumes the 4.5, if we do better on the investments, the money would be higher. But your contribution would stay the same. And of course, that can be changed at some point. If you started out at one figure and at some point in the future you wanted to go back out to referendum and increase it, you certainly have that option. It might be helpful, maybe just take it one more step further. How did I get these figures? Well, the $600 times 55 members is the $33,000.
Right.
Okay, that's simple enough. Then $600 times the 257 years of accrued liability that the firemen have essentially have earned over the number of years of service equals $154,200. The actuary amortized that over a 10-year period. It can be much more than that. It could be 20 or so. And then added the assumed interest rate of 4.5, so that's how it came out to that 19.5. So it's just a matter of adding the columns, of course. And that's going to be consistent with the fire as well as the EMS. Now, of course, in the EMS, there's less members, so the numbers are lower, but it's the same concept when we get to that report. Hopefully, did I respond to the questions okay? Yep. All right, if we move on to page 7, starts to define the benefit programs. Now, what I had her do was to start off with giving you the plan specifications, and this is simply nothing more than going over what I've already kind of said we were proposing. So it's the first one would be a defined benefit program with an effective date of January 1. Eligibility is 18 years old and 1 year of completed service. The benefit formula is going to vary by the number of amount each dollar a month that you allot for, but total credited years of service by basis of the general municipal law is 40 max. You don't have to have 40, you can go lower. If you go lower, the costs are going to be assumed lower. I proposed the normal form of benefit being that life annuity with payments guaranteed for 10 years. So the benefit of that is someone, the firefighter or the beneficiary, is going to collect 120 payments or 10 years. If they live, so if we started at 60, they would be collecting money to 70. If they live to 90, we're going to still pay them the money, okay? Death benefit, it can be, we put in here present value of accrued benefit. I'll get into that a little bit further in a minute, but it could also be there, we could include that life insurance and say, what a lot of the plans say is the larger of the two, the accrued benefit or the actual life insurance principal amount at the time of entitlement. What that does basically is, if you have a firefighter who's, let's say, got, I don't know, 25 years of service in, reaches entitlement age and starts to collect, that's fine. You can continue the insurance if you want to, till 99 years old, or you can stop the insurance at entitlement age at 60 and assume that they're starting to collect their benefits now, so they've been made, they've benefited from the program. What this does is, if you do a pre-entitlement insurance, it'll protect the younger member. So if you have a fellow who started, let's say, at 20, I don't know, he does 15 years of service or 20 years of service, but he's only 40 now, and then God forbid he passes away, his accrued benefits may not be that much money, because the program, when you do retirement programs, they put more money aside as you're getting older. So I'm going to make up a number. Let's say, for the sake of discussion, he's only got benefits of $5,000 accrued. What we would do there is, if you bought a $10,000 policy, we would say, all right, he's going to get the larger of the two, either the accrued benefit of 5 or the benefit of the insurance policy at 10. It's just an option that you can include. I've said it, I've added these things because I'm trying to give you what most of the programs include. Nothing Cadillac here, just basically what most of the programs include. All right, so here, the concept here is a little bit different. What it does here is, you have to decide on the monthly amount of benefit that you want the firefighters or EMS personnel to receive. That's on page 9. I've given you prices between 15 and 30. The maximum is 30 a month that you can allot, and the minimum is 15. It comes out to a monthly benefit of $600, $800, $1,000, or $1,200. However, I would tell you that the law presently only allows for a max of $800 on the defined benefit program. So mathematically, it's shown this way, but we would never pay more than $800 a month. And of course, that's going out a number of years. Once again,
I'm sorry, does that mean if we follow the cost across, we should just go across the line with the 800?
it would be a little bit more if you decided to do the 25 or 30. The numbers reflect a maximum. What's going on is the legislature recently changed this 1,200 for the defined contribution max. It used to be 750, I believe it was. We anticipate it going to 1,200 for the defined contribution, so we've included the numbers with the anticipated change. It's still up for discussion as to whether or not it applies to both programs. We're trying to get a clarification from the legislation on that. So I've included
So for
it.
my purposes, I'm just looking at for our purposes, looking at the estimated annual cost here, that column. And at 800, you're around 155, and then it jumps to 192, and then 230. It would mean if we did 20, 25, or 30, but with the 800, current 800 cap, the annual cost is going to be somewhere 155, 160, something like that.
That's correct. Yep, that's a
Okay.
reasonable assumption, yes. Yep. So here, once again, what we've done is we've made the assumption that they're going to stay for the 40 years. So if you did the 25,000, I asked her to give me the explanation on that. $25 a month times the maximum of 40 years. And don't forget, we're 40 years from now. That's what
Yep.
we're talking about. A firefighter could receive a maximum of $1,000 a month. The taking into consideration all the ages, this is where it's a little bit less clear. I don't have a very specific explanation item by item, but taking into consideration the current age of the firefighters and then projecting it out to 40 years on an individual basis, that's where she comes up with this, what's referred to as the normal cost of 117. The normal cost represents the amount that's going to be needed to be put aside for each of those 55 firefighters on an annual basis. All right. The past service liability, what she's doing there is, if you turn to the next page, I believe it is,
What page number is that?
that would be page number, actually, I'm sorry, let me get the correct page. If you go to page 12, she's carrying over the normal cost. That would be the one-year figure of $117,100. And then what she's done is she's done an analysis of the past service liability. That's the number of years of service that the firefighters have earned amortized over a 10-year period. So this is the total exposure you have, the $589,300. And then if you amortize it over a 20-year period or a 10-year period, you have the two figures.
That's
So-
the 5-year payback.
That's correct, yes. Yeah. And that's why the program limits it to 5 years. As you can see, that's where they're going back and they're saying, and you'll see it on the chart in a minute, there's a lot of fellas that have got, 5 years of service.
So, forgive me if we discussed this the last time you were here, but it was a while ago.
Yep.
So, how do you define active members?
Well, active members, by definition, are, in terms of the state, are firefighters who are actively engaged in the suppression of fires and/or response to emergency alarm situations. So, this is really something that the department or you folks have to determine. If this were a fire district, there's only one type of membership, that's active firefighters. They don't have to make their points. If they don't make their 50 points, which is part of this program, you don't have to pay them for a year of service. However, and this, I don't know the bylaws, on the department level, the individual department, they can have active members, inactive members, social members, ladies auxiliary, honorary members, and so forth. But those folks are not subject to benefits from you. So you would have to define, I believe the list that Larry gave me represents the active firefighters who are, covered and insured by the village.
So everyone who appears, for example, on pages 13 and beyond, they're all considered active.
That's what we've been told, right. Now, if that's not correct, we can always amend it, but that's the list that I was given as for active firefighters.
Is there a threshold that's common in terms of points to be eligible as
50.
an active?
You have to make, well, no, to be active as an active firefighter, you have to be responding to alarms, basically. Again, you may have certain rules, live in the jurisdiction, respond to alarms, and so forth. In order to be eligible to get credit, they have to earn 50 points. So one of the things that the department and the EMS folks are gonna have to do in the future is staying within the guidelines of the general municipal law, which I gave them the guidelines. They have to determine, the chief has to determine, or you have to determine, I guess most likely the chief and the EMS folks would send to you a proposal saying, here's the points system that we would like utilized. If a firefighter or EMS personnel makes those points, then they get a year of service. If they don't respond to a lot of alarms and they don't make the points, they're still active, but they don't qualify for the benefits of the program.
Have we kept track of points over the last 5 years?
No, it would just be if they're considered active members, going back 5 years. We never did the point system. So it would just be simply if they were an active member, they would get the credit.
And that's common. Most, when this program first started in 1990, they allowed for a 5-year buyback. There was no points at that point in time. So it's just, what most districts or villages do is they assume that if the guy or gal was in for 5 years, that she remained qualified and they gave them the benefit of the points.
Yeah.
However, in 2020, if you were to enact this, only the members that the chief submits a list to you saying these folks made their 50 points would be something that you would owe money to.
Right. And the chief of each of the fire departments would be required to validate that those active members met their 50 points.
And I know some people who've been active in the last 5 years, but are not on this list, and I would say that's at least a couple of them, and that's very appropriate, that they're not on this list. So it looks like it's been a thoughtful process of going through and seeing who's been active.
So just staying with the course for a
There's a name that
moment.
starts with WRA, for example, that's not on here, so.
And it's not you.
It would definitely not be me. No, Douglas was active for a while and has not been active for a while, and he shouldn't be on this list, and he isn't. So it's, to me, it means somebody went through it and looked at it carefully and said, no, 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 no. Who's active, who isn't? So I can't vouch for all the others, obviously, but I know a few of them, and so that's,
But that's something that we're gonna have to talk to the fire department about, having a system in place that's computerized, that is, you know, that they can report to us on a regular basis, who's meeting their points, who isn't, and that's gonna validate our contribution to their LoSAP.
Yeah, the way, in most cases, the sponsors, you folks, whether it's the fire commissioners or you folks or a city or whatever, don't necessarily know that, you know, Vince has responded to 15 alarms or something like that. The fire service and the EMS people keep track of that. I can't speak, I believe they indicated that they have something called Red Alert, and that does in fact keep track of points. The way the law reads, at the end of the year, the fire folks or the EMS folks have to submit to you a list of those people who they believe met the criteria. Once you approve it, and again, you don't have necessarily, I mean, I guess you could go back and question, but in most cases, you really don't have the ability to accurately say yes or no. But once you accept it at a board meeting, then it gets posted in the firehouse. Firefighters have 30 days to contest. If someone got 49 points and they say, no, I believe I made 50, they have 30 days to contest it. The chief has to investigate, or whoever is in charge has to investigate it back to them, and then the final list is submitted. That's sent to us, and then we send it up to the actuary for the analysis.
So I just have a question. Is the record keeping and tracking going to be performed at a company level or as one department? I don't know if the wardens have discussed this yet, and I know that's probably not something that you
Yeah, I don't
could
know.
answer, but
Yeah.
because within our fire department, we have a few companies, so, would it be siloed to each company? or-
Generally speaking, not. I assume there's a chief of department.
Right,
It's usually on a department level.
okay,
Same thing with the EMS. Whoever is the chief or whatever the title is for the head of the EMS personnel would be the
Right.
ones that keep track of it.
Yeah, John, one of the things that we had talked about when we first had a discussion with Larry was that was gonna be the responsibility of the companies to maintain that. And we're gonna probably have some kind of small costs down the line around how do we
That's not-
keep the accounting. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about now. I'm just talking about how the record keeping is gonna be kept.
so
by the-
each
by the
individual company
department.
will keep records? That's the question I
Well,
have.
that's something that we're gonna have to work out with Larry.
Each company enters their attendance in the Red Alert system.
I'm sorry, Larry?
Each company enters their attendance in the Red Alert system.
But who's gonna be the ultimate tracker and responsible for the posting? Is that gonna be done downstairs, or
That there will be,
is it gonna be posted in Cortlandt Street or
will have
Lawrence?
to be posted in all firehouses.
You saying that? Is that how it's gonna happen? So you're treating it separately, that's what I'm saying.
Most of the time, the fire departments and EMS agencies will post at the end of each month where they have the census of individuals and they show
Right.
them where they're at, basically.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So what she's done here basically is to try to give you an idea of, once again, of the what's considered the normal cost or the annual amount of money that's being put aside for each of the 55 members at that level of monthly benefit. And then to your point, Sam, the amortization of that is the accrued liability of the 5-year buyback, the cost of the actuarial program, and then the total cost. So in the case of the numbers here basically are just if you look at the $25, for example, $25 times the 40 years equals a monthly benefit of the $1,000, we said. So that's just how the math just comes out. If you want to walk through one report, it might be helpful to help understand a little bit. Page 12 again is simply an overview of the costs. And the amortization is your choice. We can amortize this over 10, 12, 15, 20. We wouldn't normally recommend going beyond 25 years because that's going to give you a false sense of funding ratio. It's going to be a very low amount, but it's not going to really represent what you need to put aside. So she gave typically the 10 or 12 or 20 years is the two breakpoints. So you will receive a report annually that looks very similar to this. There's a listing of the active members, dates of birth, when they reach entitlement age, how old they are now. We used 60, it could be changed. And you can see the credited years of past service. So the ones that have 5s are those individuals who would be eligible for that 5-year buyback. So the first name, Anthony has only got 1 year of service, so he's not gonna get credited for any buyback. But Brian apparently has more than 5 years, and this was a list that was given to us by Larry, so she converted this to, from the start date to 2020 and decided whether or not. My recollection is there were 27 members who had 5 years or more? I think that was the number, right? So you can see most of your departments, in terms of the firefighters, have the 5-year, would be eligible for the 5-year buyback. Then there's a list of members on page 15 who have reached entitlement age. So these folks would start to collect after that completion of the 1 year. And I believe there are 2, 4, 6, 8, I think there's 10 individuals who are over 60 and have 5 years of service. Now you notice she puts in here prior year credit. Next year, if any of these members don't make their points, the answer will be no, and your price will be reduced. Same thing on the front pages. If people don't make their credit, it'll say either yes or no, and that's based on what you're telling us, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the key decisions that we're gonna have to make, that Bob was mentioning earlier with regards to this program adoption agreement, is at what year will we entitle the firefighters to receive their benefit, right? So based on that number, 60, 62, 65, depending on what we pick, that's gonna have an impact on the numbers that the village winds up paying. So I think that's just an important point for everybody to understand.
If you can give us some finality tonight in most of the options, and it's just a matter of, do we want to do 60 or 65 or 50, 63 or something like that, the actuary can run that number and I can get it back to you,
Right.
within a day or two. Because she's got all this input, all this data input already. I tried to give you as much without overwhelming you with data, so.
Yeah. No, I think what you gave us is really good to give everybody a ballpark. But, we're gonna have to make those decisions around, how many, what age they can, the entitlement age, and then also, what our contribution's gonna be on a monthly basis to everybody. And then that's gonna basically generate the numbers that we can look at.
So if you look at page 16, just to help you again understand this a little bit further, this is, at the top it says $25 a month with a 5-year buyback. So this lists the members and shows their accrued benefit. And you can see everyone that's got 125 is eligible for that 5-year buyback. Now then what she does is she takes the ages and projects out to what they would collect when they reach entitlement age. That's what the next column is, projected entitlement benefit. Then she's explaining to you what the cost would be, the normal cost for each year, and then the past service liability. Now in your case, what she's doing here is she's showing the individuals who have the 5 years, she's posting an accrued past service liability, it's called. So that's what these, so if you take someone who's been around presumably for a while, you'll see a higher number. Richard Green, for example, he's got, if we go back to the previous pages, Richard Green, actually he's entitled, I guess. He's 74 years old. They didn't, someplace on another chart, it says how many years he's got. That's not a good example. Let me give you an example of someone I
Could
have.
we, when we're using examples, just not use the names?
Yes. Okay. Well, all right, so really basically what it amounts to is she's taking the number of years that they're in the fire service and doing the multiplication on it. Okay?
So I understand the projected entitlement benefit, that's a monthly benefit, correct?
That would be the monthly benefit,
Right.
assuming that person stays for 40 years.
Understood. And what is normal cost?
That's what the cost of it is. That's the amount of money that you have to put aside on an actuarial basis each year for that individual to get to pay that amount when they reach 40 years.
Each year.
And the closer the people are to entitlement age, the more money you have to put aside. So that first individual is only 20 years old, but the second individual is 50 years old. So you can see the difference. All right, so that's she shows you the cost of the benefits on pages 16 and 17. Page 18, we kind of looked at already, but it's just a duplication of page 12, I think it was. That's the cost factor. Page 19, I start off the same program, defined benefit, only now at $20 a month. So the specifications are the same, the only difference is $20 a month. And now you can see the costs are reduced somewhat from 25. So if you compare that to that page that shows the summary, if I can find the number. So the numbers that are on page 6, which is the overall summary with all the different levels, now she's showing you what it would cost for $20 a month. I'm sorry, not page 6, I'm staying corrected, page 12. Sorry. If you go back to page 12, that's the breakout of all 15, 20, 25, and 30 a month, and this is the detail for 20 a month. And that's that 155 figure, Mr. Mayor, that you had pointed out.
I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that, for example, person number 3, he's young, he's, what is he, 24? It looks like a lot of money, but that's 40 years from now, right? $800 or $1,000 a month seems like a lot of money maybe today, not even, but, so let's just keep that in mind. And also, our numbers don't really increase that much unless we go out and get another referendum to increase them in the future.
That's correct.
So these are present dollars, so it's never going to be more expensive than it is today.
That's correct. That's why I said, you know, there are some actuaries who will propose to you that if everybody stays from the time they start now, whatever that start point is, for 40 years or till they reach age 60, it's going to be X amount of dollars. Then they'll back off and say, well, if they only make credit 50% of the time, it's going to be X. That's not a realistic approach. We don't believe. So we try to be the most conservative we can be in terms of preparing figures for you. And this is kind of like a worst case or most expensive scenario, if you will. I don't think it'll be this much, but this is what you have to, if you're going to be fiscally responsible from an actuarial standpoint, this is what you should anticipate.
Or at least the first couple of years, it'll be this much.
It's going to, what you'll get is you'll get a complete comprehensive report each year, so you'll be able to monitor the changes. If 5 people leave and they don't vest, the money will stay in your coffers. But then if you bring in 2 new firefighters, then she'll start projecting them from 20-year-olds, something like that. That's the benefit of having the actuarial survey done every year, and of course that also meets the fiscal requirements of the comptroller's office. So that's basically the decisions. Now let me just jump a little bit further. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can you just explain on page 20 the total credited service years? Because you plugged in 40. So again, this is something that we would have to decide if we're going to do 30, we're going to do 35,
That's
or
correct.
we're going to do 40, because then that also has an impact on the payout.
That's correct. Yeah, because if we're only going to be projecting out 30 years, you're going to have a reduction of probably about 25%, I would guess. But again, I'm just ballparking it. Okay. Let me explain to you the insurance component so you at least get a picture of what your choices are. If you would turn to page 29. Not knowing how you wanted to approach this, I gave you like a complete menu. So if you look at the death benefit, let's talk about the $5,000. What I did is I went to 2 different companies and got you quotes. So if we did the $5,000 death benefit in the program with no accidental death or dismemberments, just strictly if they reach entitlement age or not, essentially, it would go from age 15 as the minimum, which is really not realistic, it's actually 18, but the life insurance companies do 15 to 59. It would stop at 59, meaning once a man or a woman reached entitlement age, they would no longer be eligible for this insurance, but rather start collecting their benefits. And you can see the price would be $734 a year for those 55 members. It's not an expensive program. If you wanted to go, again, inside the program, 5,000 with no accidental death and dismemberment, 15 to 99, meaning they would collect this life insurance even after they reach entitlement. So they're getting their benefits now, and they continue, they live to 84. Upon deceasing at 84, they would get the $5,000 death benefit. That number jumps up now, of course, because you're adding in a lot of older members. That goes up to $2,886 is the lower bid.
For how many members?
55.
And this is a group plan, so there's no
This is
medical,
a group
there's no...
term, yeah, guaranteed issue,
Yeah.
group insurance, that's a very good point. And no medical, everybody's in, and it's just a matter of what age you stop it at, so to speak. Okay? This would change as the people age, it's gonna change. If membership is younger, it'll go down. If it's older, it'll go up a little bit. Now, again, because there was a question brought up at the EMS and fire meeting about the fact that there's no other life insurance, to my knowledge, anyway, if I'm incorrect on that, that's something else. I said, why don't we just quote it with the AD&D? So what I'm saying is this program can be taken out of the LoSAP program and simply be the village providing a death benefit for firefighters. The benefit of this one, if you include the AD&D, that's the figure you would be using. That would be outside the program, have no relevance to the LoSAP, but here, God forbid a firefighter were to die in the line of duty, you would have a double indemnity, double the amount, and God forbid they were to lose a limb. There's a whole schedule, which I have the documents, but I didn't want to overwhelm you with 50 pages. Once you decide something, I'll give you the detail. But there was, if you lose a limb or sight or 2 limbs or something, there's a schedule of benefits that would be eligible. And the price is not that much greater. So I just wanted to give you the option to decide if you want to do it in the program or outside the program.
So the 2 columns here, what's the difference?
The annual charge columns?
Yeah, there's the standard versus, what is that?
The VISO is one company, the standard is another.
Okay.
So I just wanted to be
Different
competitive and try to get you the lowest price I could get you. These are the 2 principal companies that write fire and EMS agencies. Typically, it's interesting because the standard, because these amounts are so low, both companies will go the full route to 99. The standard usually gets lower as we get older. So you can see if you drop down to 10,000 with the AD&D, 15 to 99, they're actually a couple $100 less than VISO. So that's why I wanted to give you kind of a menu to pick from. So this can be done if the village decided they wanted to write life insurance for their firefighters and EMS personnel, straight life insurance, that's the price, with the AD&D. If you want to include it in the program where it stops at entitlement age or goes beyond entitlement age, look at the ones that say no AD&D, and that's the price we would do. All right? Let me stop at that. That's the end of the fire. So, any questions on the fire, people? We can go through the EMS a lot faster, of course, because it's the same layout.
Although, of course, our EMS volunteers are as important to us.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yes, I don't mean to minimize it at all, I'm just, it's just, we've already talked a lot of these things through, so I kept everything exactly the same for both fire and EMS. Let me just find that page. All right, so I did the same thing, I numbered the pages. If we were to go to defined contribution, once again, the amount is $600 to $1,200. The annual contribution amount would be identified there in that column. The 5 years of buyback, if you will, is listed as the 5-year prior service, amortized. Estimated cost for the program, and then estimated annual cost overall. I believe, how many EMS people are, so I can have to go dig it out? We're talking about a census of about 20 people, so I thought it was 22, something like that, 20, 21, 22 people. So that's the defined contribution cost. And then keeping the specifications the same for defined benefit, if you turn to page 6, you have the annual estimated cost at $15, $20, $25, and $30. And then I also gave you the life insurance prices at the back, same format. The only problem with the life insurance was I wasn't able to get the standards prices in today. They didn't get back to me yet, so I gave you just the VSO, but it's just, it's gonna be in the right, same ballpark. And as you can see, the numbers are $330 for $5,000 worth of coverage is, you know, inexpensive essentially, within the grand scheme of life insurance coverages. So if I may, I know you were looking to get the prices, so what I did was, if you were to accept all of the assumptions that we just proposed to you, based on what the fire service and EMS service has fed back to us, at $25 with the 5-year buyback and so forth that we discussed, the fire would come to $192,900. If you went with $10,000 worth of life insurance, it would be $26,447. The EMS would be $66,800. If you went with the life insurance at 10, it's $610. Your total cost would be $263,000 a year for the proposals with the life insurance at $10,000. Now, anything from that, as you said, if we deviate from that,
That's
that's,
for both,
that's correct for both,
EMS and fire.
263. Including our fees, the actuarial fees, life insurance, and the benefits.
All in.
Correct, sir?
Okay, so we can kind of go through these and look at different pieces and what we want to do. I have a couple of kind of longer-term questions.
Sure.
So if I was getting a benefit in the 1970s, I'm thinking more than 40 years ago when I was in high school, closer to almost 50. No, 50. Ouch. You know, and I was getting $1,000 a month. You could buy a new Corvette for $3-something. I mean, $1,000 is a lot of money. And I'm thinking, okay, 20 years from now, if things, you know, there's $1,000 what you can get for it now, what you can get for it in 20 years, it's not going to be so much.
Right.
If we, whether it's defined benefit or defined contribution, if we wanted to, if future village governments wanted to up the benefit, is that something that has to be done by referendum every time? Is that the state
My
law?
understanding is that anything that increases the cost has to go to referendum. If you decided that you wanted to change your point system and allow, I don't know, training 10 points, start off with, and then you go to 15 points, it's something like that doesn't have to go. If there's no financial impact, it does not have to go to referendum.
Okay.
So, for example, right now, a lot of our districts are coming back to us and saying, don't forget, this program started in 1990. So with a 5-year buyback, a lot of districts are at the point now where the guys are getting 35 years of benefit if they've been around for that long. And we're getting closer to that 40-year max. So, and they're funded very well because they've been putting the right amount of money, let's say, aside for 35 or 30 years. So they're asking us to do a study, taking in, let's say, from 20 to 25 or 25 to 30, as you point out. And that's something that the actuary would give you. In other words, the new cost would be X, and then they go out to referendum for that new cost.
And let me go to the other extreme. What happens if down the road we don't have volunteer fire department members and we don't have volunteer EMS, that we end up with a paid fire department completely, we end up with a paid EMS completely? What happens to this plan?
The village would be obligated to pay the accrued benefits. In other words, whatever the firefighters have earned up to the point that you went paid, let's say, you would owe.
And then
And then at
get
that
it when
point, there would be no more
when they get
normal
to that
cost.
age, or?
Well, no, what typically would happen would be the village would continue, they might not have all the money set aside. Let's say they were at 75% funded. They would have to continue contributing to it, the amount would not increase because there would be no more a normal annual cost. However, you'd still be anticipating a 30-year program at 4.5%. So if a firefighter was 30 years old when paid, he's still not going to collect until he's 60. So the program would still have to be administered, financial review would have to be done, and so forth. So it would just have stopped at a certain point.
Yeah, so even though people aren't going to accrue additional benefits, you can't just shut it down and pay it out? I know that's...
I have to admit to you, I'm not 100% positive on that. I don't know that,
Okay.
you certainly wouldn't be owing any more money. Whether you could actually pass a resolution at a village level and say, look, no one's going to gain any more money, I think it would depend, my guess would depend on how well funded you were. If you were very close, let's assume for a moment you were 90% funded, and to get 100% funded on your accrued liability, it would mean $50,000. If you put that $50,000 into the program, then you could direct us to pay everybody off.
Your actuary report also has Part 2 money into it, so that would be considered money that would be owed, that would be subtracted because there wouldn't be any more Part 2 people to pay. So you know, when you have to look at the numbers and see what your unfunded is versus how much that's set aside for Part 2 money.
That's a good point. One of the other assumptions that the actuary makes, and it's listed here, is if someone has reached entitlement age and made their points last year, she assumes they're going to continue to make their points out for that 30 year that she's projecting.
Right, yeah.
As Vince points out, if you shut the program down, or if the person doesn't make the points, that has to come off, is subtracted from it, so your obligation would be less, and we'd have to readjust the accrued liability at that point.
That's a good point, that when you do a yearly actuarial report, not everybody in Part 2 will make their awards. Some will, some won't. Some make it this year, some don't make it next year, and they'll make it the year after. So the report is it's basic, but it's estimated.
This year it's based on full that everybody's
That's
making.
correct.
Yeah.
If next year half of them make it, does that mean the annual payment is adjusted?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can you give us a top-line version of how the referendum process works?
Basically, you need to engage your attorney. I can give you a couple of sample ones. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they're ones that other people have used. And typically, what it really goes to is you establish the specifications of the program. In other words, 18 years old, 1 year completed service, $25 a month, 5-year buyback, the variables that I gave up front. And the anticipated annual cost is X.
Clinton will do that, he's already weighed in on.
All right, then what?
I'm sorry?
Does it,
Then it goes to a vote.
goes to a vote, the public is?
Correct.
And so do you typically do that when there's another election or some sort of a school board type of?
You could say anytime.
You do it
We can do it
whenever
anyway.
you want, and how much advance notice do we have to give?
45 days.
Less than that, because if we do it on our own as a village, Clinton had weighed in, and said that under village law, it's much less time frame. In fact, I think he said 10 days.
And do you need to reach a certain threshold of the public's input?
You're asking some questions that may be unique to the village, but I believe it's just, if you have a majority of the votes.
That's it.
So if if there were 100 people voted and, 75 said yes and 25 said no, it would pass.
I would imagine it would be in our best interest if we want to do this to educate the public and have their buy-in.
Your best advocate is your firefighter and EMS people.
Right.
You'd never want to get this deep into the weeds, so to speak, in terms of explanation. It would be more, the way I would recommend proposing it would be that the program is based on trying to retention of firefighters and EMS personnel who are under strain and stress right now with increased volume of calls and increased training demands that the state's making and so forth, and that type of an approach.
Right. And you could designate one polling place, or it has to be multiple? I mean, these are things we need to
I don't know the
find
answer to
out.
that question, yeah.
Clinton is, our village council's working on that, and I've heard there are some really simple you know, you have one, you can, I mean, you can do that kind of stuff.
It has to be promoted in
Yes.
a big way. I mean,
That's
even
why
for
Vince is saying that
general
the firefighters
elections-
and the EMS personnel and getting their families out and their friends out and supporting it and so forth is the way to go.
I think some residents think it's not don't understand it's a volunteer organization. Both organizations are volunteer.
Yeah. Well, some residents don't understand that we have a board.
If I can make a suggestion to you,
I-
I know we covered a lot. If you want, Vince and I can leave for a few minutes, and if you want to talk things over a little bit and then maybe come up with some additional questions, we can come back in and answer your questions. If you want to do that, it's up to you.
I think we're gonna need some time to really determine like some of the variables associated with the length of service programs and, you know, the adoption agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, I feel pretty comfortable with what you've presented. Everybody else is good. I know Sam is. You guys, I think it's really us just kind of figuring out what makes the most sense and some input from our volunteer leadership as well.
Okay.
Well, there's a variety of options, and then there are options within the options.
That's correct.
So there's a lot to.
Yeah, and if you come
digest
back and you
and
say,
figure out.
I don't know, just for the sake of discussion, you wanted to do 63 years of service, a maximum of 30 years of benefits, and $20 a month, I'll have an actuarial figure back to you in 3 or 4 days. I mean, it's just, so
Okay.
we can,
Yeah.
if you want to give me a couple picks, I can redo it.
Yeah.
All right.
I
This
think
was
what we're
really-
gonna do, yeah, we'll probably end up there,
Yeah.
but we're gonna wanna go through ourselves first and
Okay,
talk
that's fine.
about some of the variables.
Okay, and we can certainly, you know, at any point in the future, you want to do a teleconference quick, once you come up with these, we can talk it through over a teleconference.
Bob, I think we're gonna end up with a list and just say, here, run these
Price it.
for us.
Yeah.
This is where we are.
And the other thing is that for this board, this is a priority. We really want to, you know, make a decision on this, and, you know, we think highly of our firefighters and our EMS, and so we're really looking forward to making a decision about this soon.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about, I know we had discussed this a little bit earlier when you called, do you want me to talk a little bit about how the financial aspect works, the investment part?
Sure.
All right, so assuming that you pass this, right, our function would be to monitor the censuses that you send us in, send them off to the actuary, produce an annual report, come in and sit down with you annually or semi-annually, go over the actuarial report with you. The other part, the other component of what we do, that's kind of the administrative part and actuarial part. The other part is the financial part. So what we would do is we would establish an account for you in Empire National Bank, that's the bank that we use. You would have to identify certain trustees that would have the rights to signature on this account, and your monies would be deposited in that account to make payments for the benefits for the firefighters to be paid monthly. We issue the checks and so forth. Actually, we don't issue really checks. Most of the time, it's electronic transfers into bank accounts and so forth. So we take care of all that business with the firefighters and getting their account numbers and so on and so forth. The money, every penny, there will never be a penny of your money in anybody's name other than your name. So it will be the village's account with the bank. We don't do any transactions other than make the payments. The payments are made off your census list and you approve that. We don't do any transactions, withdrawals or additions or anything without your authorization. So there's a paper trail, so to speak, for every transaction. In addition to that, the monies that we normally like to keep somewhere between 10 and 12 months, depending upon how often the village would like to pay or when their pattern of payment would be. We want to make sure we have at least 12 months worth of money in the bank to pay your benefits, so that at no point do we have to come back and say we couldn't make the December payment because we don't have enough funds. That's the smaller number, so to speak. If you were, and I'm just going to make up a number, if you were to decide to send us $250,000 at the start of the program, the second component of this is how do you want that money invested? Now, what we do is most of our districts, departments, EMS corps, and so forth, are very super conservative in terms of the investments. So typically, investments would be of one of three types. The first one would be annuities. We do a lot of annuities with life insurance companies. Those are benefits that are a 5-year, 6-year, 7-year annuity. The owner of the annuity is you folks. The beneficiary of the annuity is you folks. and there has to be an annuitant's name. So we usually use a trustee as the annuitant. It has to be a live person. But that person has no rights to those money because the owner and the beneficiary is the village. So we could establish or purchase annuities for you. Those are usually either fixed or slightly variable funds. So a typical fixed one would say, year one, it's 3%, years 2 to 7, it drops down to 2.5 or something, and you're almost, I can tell you almost guaranteed, with the exception of the interest calculations, of exactly how much money you're gonna have at the end of the 7-year period. We can do those in steps, essentially, starting out with a 5-year, maybe another one, 6-year maturity. When they reach maturity, we come back and we tell you we have a better deal for you, you can do this annuity. Those are annuities issued by life insurance companies, has to be in the state of New York, and the state of New York is the toughest jurisdiction in the country on life insurance companies in terms of reserves that are required and so forth. The second thing is we have created a program, it's called a partnership, it's called New York Safe, and basically it is a partnership that's only fire districts, villages, EMS personnel, benevolent associations can join. And you are actually a partner in the program. It functions under an investment strategy of, again, very conservative. 2/3 of the monies are placed into fixed income, 1/3 is placed into equities. So you have a little bit of benefit of the market fluctuations there, but again, it's a very conservative approach, all right? That's called New York Safe. It's administered by Pinnacle Capital up in Albany. They're an investment firm. And that one meets all the requirements of a typical SEC type of a thing, meaning there is a custodian for the assets, there is accountants, there are lawyers. The thing is very well monitored because we recognize that the people that are our clients are municipalities and so forth. The third thing is if you, at some point, if you wanted to incur an element of risk, I would bring up our financial arm, which is Castle Asset Management. This is a registered, certified financial planner, and now you open up basically the equity market. So just to give you an example, in 2019, the SAFE program did 8.19 rate of return net, meaning after all the expenses for accountants and custodians and so forth, 8.19. That's a good year. That program is meant to go slightly above and yield a return someplace between 4 and 7. Above the annuity rate, but again, conservative, not a big exposure of equity dollars. On the other hand, the Castle Asset Management program, the one that he uses most for LOSAPs is what he calls a managed solution program. It's kind of the flip of the SAFE. It's 2/3 equity, 1/3 fixed income. That returned almost 18 last year. So if you have a little of an appetite for a little bit of risk, again, this is not wild kind of investing and anything like that, and of course he would come up and he would develop what's called an investment strategy document with you that basically sets the rules by which you want him to operate, and then he would take money, it would be placed in a Charles Schwab account. Again, the dollars are only in your name, but he would manage those dollars for you. So if you gave him $100,000, let's say, he would manage that in a 60% equity, 40% fixed income. So that's basically the way we do it with all the districts. And then what we do is we monitor this very carefully. So if we see that an annuity the interest rate is dropping down, let's say it's a variable annuity, we'll come back to you and say, look, you got $100,000 in this annuity, you're allowed to take 10% out a year. We got a better annuity now, why don't we take the 10% out and move it someplace? But again, we don't do that unless you say go and give us a written authorization to do it. So the funds are completely within your control. Nothing is in anyone's name other than the village's name. And we could establish one account for both EMS and fire, or if you wanted to do 2 accounts, we're going to do 2 actuarial studies because the numbers are different. But we can slice and dice that kind of any way you want. Now, and this is, like I said, we do 250 of these, so this is nothing that's new to us. We're super, super conservative. And I don't know of any time that the auditors from the State Comptroller's Office have found any issues. We just got audited in one district who will remain unnamed, but they've been with us for 30 years. She could not find 1 penny missing in 30 years, so we take pride in that. So, okay. Any other questions I can comment on?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
options.
You're quite-
It's
you're quite
really-
welcome.
It's very comprehensive.
thank you. I
Appreciate
hope, I tried to make it simple, but I know it's
Yeah.
not simple, but tried to make it, so.
Yeah, I spent a few hours going over it.
Oh, good, all right, well, you know, by all means, please, look, ask questions, if I don't have the answers, I'll get them from the actuary.
Okay,
All right? Thank you very much, folks, I appreciate the time tonight.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for the confidence in having us.
Yep.
What's that? Oh, just down to the, what is it, the bridge here? Yeah, I don't know why, we just went back there.
Sounded good.
Yep, thanks.
Would you like me to leave a few extra copies in case you want to share them with council or
Yes,
whoever?
Sure.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll pick those up. That's an extra one there. Who is the person that needs
Oh,
this?
sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, guys.
Thank you. Great job.
Thanks, Vince.
Yeah, good to see you.
We're going to move on to our next discussion item on floating zones. Before I do that, I just want to note we had a discussion item on the sidewalk cafes, and I'm going to table that for this evening. At the request of a trustee, and also there's some additional information that she wanted to bring forward and wants to be part of that. So we'll probably take it up again under old business, new business next week, so we can continue that in a timely manner. There are also a couple of things that are going to come up, some later discussions that we may want to move on this evening once we've had a chance to talk to them. So we may want to do another special session at the end of the meeting just in order to consider those, but we'll see where those discussions go. In the meantime, also on the floating zones, I know there's a communication that came from the planning board, excuse me, that was, I thought was pretty thoughtful and thorough. Had some really good points, but it was something that we received late this afternoon. There's some stuff in it that I think that's really worth considering as we look at adopting this. So I know a couple of them, we can talk about it now, or we can also try to kind of absorb it and take it up again next week. What's your pleasure on that?
I haven't had a chance to read through their
Yeah.
comments yet, so I'd like to
Then
wait.
let's do it next week. So we'll do one under old business, new business as well. Because I really want to, that one thing that we could do, however, is we were waiting for these notes, these comments to come in from the planning board, and we'd kept the public hearing open in order to do that. I don't think there's anything else that we need to do in order to, we're not receiving any ongoing comments from anyone else. So we could close the public hearing. So we may want to consider that if we go into a special session later on this evening. Okay? So we're going to move on to the stormwater mapping project. Mr. Giacchio, you want to jump on that? I think it's pretty straightforward. Essentially, there's a name change.
Yeah, a company was acquired. We had a contract. Let me just give you a background. We're part of a consortium of 17 municipalities for stormwater management. We're the lead agency managing a grant that fully funds this project. We've got mapping of our catch basins, mapping of our outfalls, and it continues to do that work. The company that was awarded the contract that we pay is Bone, B-O-W-N-E, and they've been purchased by Lero Group. They were acquired by them. We can't make checks to Lero Group unless we change the resolution to reflect that. And I think we're still, the balance is close to $100,000 that we still owe them for this project.
So there was a resolution that was distributed as part of your package for this evening, if we do go into a special session and we pass that resolution, then we can have them on the warrant for next week and actually pay them.
Yeah, that's good.
So, you guys good with that?
Yes.
All right, so we will have a special session later, and we'll consider that. Next up, Beekman Avenue Sidewalk Project.
Yeah, we had sent the final plans to the state for approval, and we're ready to go out to bid on the sidewalk project, Beekman Avenue. So we're just asking authorization to do that.
Okay, and we need to do that by resolution?
Yeah, and it could be next week. Doesn't have to be.
Yeah, okay. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Next up, we have a request from Mr. Roan to appoint a after-school program counselor. And he's recommending at the normal rate, someone who should be familiar to all of us. You may recall Daniel Durango, who was an excellent intern here at the village.
You said he would be back.
He said it
And
with
he
a
meant it.
Yeah. And Mr. Roan is recommending that he be hired here as part of the part-time staff for the after-school folks. And
I got a question with regards to, is this an additional person? Because I know that Matt had come before us a couple of
We
months
were
ago.
short two, I believe. He's hired one.
Okay,
and
so this would be the second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
so if it's cool with everybody, we could also approve that hire in a special session as well? You all good with, okay, great. Rochelle, I'll ask you to lead us off into this one.
All right.
About the Kids Club.
Many of you already know Kids Club is an organization that funds programming and support for underserved children in Terrytown and Sleepy Hollow. This year will be their 10th year in existence, and it will also be the mark of $1 million that they've donated back into the community for support and programming. And so they'd like to commemorate that, and they would like us to be a part of it. They're planning on a celebration ceremony at Warner Library in the middle of March. The exact date isn't set yet. And so basically that's the discussion. They would just like us to be a part of it. And I personally think we should.
Me too.
They do really good work.
They do.
And so I think we would be pleased we're pleased to be asked, and we would be honored to participate.
Wonderful. And I guess I also wanted to point out, I forgot, for example, programs that they support and help fund are the Life Center, the AFHT literacy program that happens 3 nights a week at Paulding, the Community Food Pantry, which full disclosure, I'm a president of, and lots of other programming that happens in the community.
Michael will run a banner across the bottom of the TV
Yeah,
screen
right.
that says full disclosure.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
Breaking news,
Yeah.
right, sorry.
Live.
Yeah. You heard it here
Twitter,
first.
Lights up.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. That completes.
Did we leave off the kayak rack
Yeah.
rental?
Yeah, I
reason?
did. That was just me messing up.
Oh, okay. I thought you left it off on purpose. I was like, wait a minute.
No, I try to leave a time in every meeting so that you guys can correct me.
Okay.
Does
So-
Matt have a recommendation?
Yes, he does. Right, Anthony, are you
Yeah.
with him?
225.
What was it last year?
Well, it was only half a season last year,
Yeah.
so it was
150, I
150.
think, and 300 for the season that was the
How long
intent.
is the waiting list for kayak racks?
There is none currently.
Oh, there's no waiting list?
It's new.
No, I
So-
understand that,
What number does he want for the full season? What is he recommending for the full season?
So apparently, the boat club has a waiting list, and they charge $225, and we kind of figured we'd be consistent with that. So that's
Okay.
recommending
At least to start
$225.
off with.
Just to make sure that it becomes used, and
Yeah.
we could always raise it in the future. But $300 was the anticipated fee, but we're going to make it $225 instead.
Or the recommendation is 225?
So offhand, do you know how many we actually rented last year?
Or just a couple. It was late in the season. I think we had one or two.
Yeah.
It was real late.
I think there's a total of 3 right now.
I think you'll have a lot more interest.
Maybe we'll just put some, like, kayaks in there and make it look like it's popular. We'll do more.
Well, we'll see. I think it- we'll see
$225
what
while
happens.
they last.
Well,
That's what you want to put in there.
Breaking news.
Act now.
breaking
No,
news.
for the first 25 people in line. Or there are 30 spaces for the first 30 people.
I think we weren't terribly aggressive last year. I think we could contact Ichabod's Homeowners Association, River House Homeowners Association.
Yeah.
Maybe there's residents there if they're interested in.
Yeah, we need, just do
We
some
could get the
publicity
word
on it.
out.
You'll
We
have
could
enough
benefit,
people
yeah.
there.
Yeah, I talked with Matt about how we can go about advertising it a little better. I mean, not better, but I mean, it was the end, midway through the season by the time it was finished, so there wasn't really
People
much
didn't know
time.
it was there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we've talked about how we can get the word out a little more aggressively.
So everybody's good with the 225?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We can do that next week?
First year special.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, great. Can I now, I'm probably finished with, we are probably finished with the agenda. Can I get a motion to go into special session to consider 3 resolutions?
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
It was Sam and Glenn, or Rochelle and Denise.
You decide.
Sam and Glenn, okay? He definitely said second. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, all right, this is a special session to consider 3 resolutions, and the first one is on the,
Stormwater.
the stormwater management mapping contract. If somebody would
I'll
read
do
that?
it. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow recognizing assignment of stormwater management mapping contract. Whereas on July 11th, 2017, the Village of Sleepy Hollow awarded the bid for data collection and the mapping of certain stormwater infrastructure in the consortium communities to Sidney B. Bone and Son LLP, and authorized the village administrator to enter into an agreement with Sidney B. Bone. And whereas on December 11th, 2019, the general counsel of the Leroy, is that how you say it?
Sounds good.
Okay. The Leroy Group advised that Leroy had completed an asset acquisition of Sidney B. Bone and Son and Bone Management Systems. Relevant pages of their asset purchase agreement were reviewed by Village Council and found to be in order. And whereas Leroy has advised that RLT Engineering, Geology, and Land Surveying is the licensed survey group within Leroy. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees recognizes the assignment of the Village of Sleepy Hollow Stormwater Mapping Management Project to the Leroy Group and authorizes the village treasurer to direct payment for services on this contract to either RLT Engineering, Geology, and Land Surveying or the Leroy Group against approved invoices. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. This one's definitely Denise and Rochelle. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Abstentions. All right, the resolution's approved. Can I get a resolution to approve hiring Daniel Durango at an hour, for the after-school program at an hourly rate of $16.01 per hour?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Rochelle and John. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing on floating zones?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? The resolution's approved. Can I get a motion to end the special session?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions, and our special session is over. And our business for the evening is complete. Thank you and good night.